But trust me, you won't hold that. Hold
The people, especially the people, you know. So, it amazed me because a lot of times when I'm reading a book, I'm like putting myself in your shoes, and you know how sometimes you have to figure out like, well, who is allergic to what kind of food, who doesn't eat this, who doesn't eat that, and sometimes you're not told until on the shoot, but then there are movie characters, celebrities who are nice. They say, oh, it's okay, I'll just not eat it. Right. Like whoever, she said that she's actually diabetic or something, and she had to taste something like a sweet dessert. Right. And she said, you were very apologetic, but then she was like really nice about it. It's okay, I'll just not eat it. No big deal. You don't have to like do it all over again. Right. Talk about this one particular, I'm thinking of is the oysters, the raw oysters. Because a lot of times you actually, and I'm so excited about this, I'm so proud of this, is that you crack your brain thinking like, well, what am I going to use to make it look like raw oyster when you cannot use raw oyster because it's just going to be fresh by the time it's done.
Right.
So you actually use something that is, I want to use the word endemic to Taiwan.
Yeah, I am very, very proud of that invention as well.
You want to describe that?
It's there was a time I kept getting requests that the actor is supposed to eat oysters. I think because oyster is like a fancy.
It signifies class, right?
Right, and so I kept getting the same request, but the request always is they're not supposed to eat raw oyster, or they're vegan, or the food safety concern.
Right.
So I had to turn down the first couple ones that I got the job, and that always gave me this very frustrating feeling that I couldn't accomplish the task. So I just kind of start figure things out. I first looking online, and some food stylists gave out a few clues. I remember this one woman said she would use flan, which is like a pudding. But I just couldn't quite picture it. I bought those pudding. It doesn't look anything like an oyster. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna start from scratch. I don't want to go by other people's tips and tricks. I don't know, all of a sudden I thought about this tapioca ball that we have. It's essentially the same ingredients, the boba tea, the boba in the bottom of the boba tea. And I kind of just start playing with it, because after you mix the tapioca starch with water and then you cook it, it became kind of like a clay, like very pliable texture.
Stretchy kind of.
Yeah, so a little, so when it's half cooked, it's white and pliable, so you could kind of shape it into an oyster. But when it's fully cooked, it became translucent, so it looks even more like an actual oyster. And then I kind of just lace the tapioca with some sesame paste.
Yeah, because there's some
black sesame paste to kind of make it the intestines of the oysters. And all of a sudden, it just looks and feels, and it just works.
And it's even edible, right?
It is edible, and I'm very proud of it, not only because it's a very regional Taiwanese dessert, but it's also gluten-free and vegan, and it's completely safe to eat under like a room temperature long period of time, because there's no meat in there, there's no dairy in there. So it became kind of like the ultimate set fake oyster. And especially when it's sweet, when the actor has to eat it over and over again, they don't feel sick and they don't get tired of it. They actually find it quite enjoyable. So yeah, that's, but funny thing is, after I cracked the code on the oyster, I have not gotten more requests about this oyster job.
Oh, well, wait and see. Maybe.
But it's the Murphy law.
Yeah, that is so cool. Well, I think the last thing is that maybe you can talk about just what Hollywood's like, having been there 10 years and with those people. Is it anything that everybody thought it to be? I mean, of course, there's all the glamour, but actually, you're pretty open about some of the things behind that glamour. Within some of these families.
Yeah, I guess because we're behind the scene people, so technically we see the glamour, but we're not part of that glamour. And Hollywood is glamorous, and they kind of, unlike the Taiwanese film production, they set you up pretty good. So there was always on-site catering, craft service that provide snacks.
Oh yeah, I see that in movies. That is amazing. Just a whole table full of snacks and everything. In between shoots, just go eat.
Right, that one it's good and bad at the same time. You gain a lot of weight working on set, and there's a lot of waiting downtime, so you have nothing to do but to eat. But also the safety protocol is more
Pronounced.
Yeah, so here sometimes you hear about some crazy, like working 24 hours straight and some accident happen. That doesn't happen in Hollywood. Really? And I think Hollywood is just overall, I guess because they have more money. So they have this concept of if you want something, you have to pay for it. Maybe not so much in the Taiwanese film industry. They tend to just work their crew to a very unreasonable extent. But just like any other production or any operation project that involves working with human beings,
then it's all the same.
yeah, there are definitely frustrating time where last minute changes. That's universal. Just because it's Hollywood doesn't mean they're more organized or people won't change their mind on things. So all of that is kind of still the same, especially the last minute request. That seemed to happen a lot more since the pandemic. People use the pandemic as an excuse, like, oh, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough people, manpower. And I think the biggest difference, they're willing to pay for their unreasonable requests, but doesn't mean there's not none that exist.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, let's talk about this part where you became private chef to some of the celebrities, in Hollywood and Bel Air and all that. But actually, those jobs help you during this pandemic when filming is like totally come to a complete stop. So, I mean, I think you're very lucky, to have all the recommendations. And I think with your personality, I think people would actually enjoy you, appreciate you as a private chef. I can see that. Yeah, what's that like?
Cool. Well, private chef actually helped me not just through pandemic, also at the beginning of my food styling career.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, right.
When things were very rocky and freelance wasn't stable. So yeah, private chef has always been my I did not set up to be a private chef, but that kind of has become my root in America. I think being a private chef to very famous people is just like being a private chef to anyone, because being a private chef, it's all about customizable service. It's not just about, like, if you're a famous chef in a restaurant, you can be yourself and you could have this take it or leave it type of attitude. But being a personal chef, you have to be able to read your client's preferences, and you have to be able to adjust. So your ego has to be, smaller. I think that's the biggest difference between a chef versus a private chef. And I think I'm pretty good at reading people's preferences. And over the years, I've gotten better and better. Including my mom. I have tried to cook for her years ago, and I made her this feast of all the things that I think is the best, my favorite dishes. She gave me like the worst possible
score.
Yeah, she's just like too salty, too greasy, too unhealthy, and then I realized no, it's not about what you like to eat. It's always about who you are serving.